You inherit too much power. You have proven you can rule yourself. Now you must learn to rule others. Something none of your ancestors learned.
My father rules an entire planet.
He's losing it.
He's getting a richer one.
He'll lose that one too.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Hello, all you gigalos. Welcome to Garbage In, Garbage Out. I'm your host, Kelton, and I'm joined, as always, by my amazing co-host, Grift. How's it going, buddy?
Oh, it's great. Saw the new Dune in IMAX last night on the biggest screen in the city, and holy shit, man. That was something. Like, I know we usually shit on movies and try to make them better, but I think to sort of round out this season, it'll be nice to just have us both just just slather this thing with praise because, yeah.
Well, it's just showing that it is possible. That it is possible to take an objectively bad and broken movie, fix it, and make something very cool. It makes, in a weird way, our podcast feel more worthwhile, knowing that we could be pitching to the next Denis Villeneuve, because we know the next great director is definitely listening to this podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
For sure. Yeah.
I would not be surprised, like, coming out of like our corner of Twitter or just the associated accounts and people building up their like outsider media presences. I would not be surprised in the future if like people actually hit it big, because there's some real creative talent on our side.
Yeah, there's one guy who's already claiming he wants to be the next Harvey Weinstein of left Twitter. The successful movies wise, not the other stuff, that aspect,
Yeah. No, I only slid into her DMs because
I respected her as a poster. I wanted to see if she would join my indie film project where she has sex in a shower with a wolf man. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. It's called Trauma, so that way then it's not creepy. Direct quote from James Gunn, I believe.
Oh my God.
Man, the more stuff that starts to like leak out about how James Gunn acted in his early days, the more I'm just writing off the entire Trauma genre as like, you know what? I don't need to get it. I don't need to like it. It's fine. It's missed on me. It's a little bit like the Uncharted video games, of where I've never played them, but cool. They're like Indiana Jones and Tomb Raider, but not awesome. That's enough for me. Fantastic.
Well, it looks like the movie's going to resemble more the Tomb Raider films than the Indiana Jones ones. If anyone's seen that trailer, oh my God.
Hey, Mark Wahlberg is doing some real infinite tier acting in that, so I can't hate on it too much. It looks like, I watched that, I'm like, yeah, that's going to be a banger of an episode for us to talk about later.
It'll be the sequel to the Infinite episode, which I definitely want to, like, the team of us two, like, riffing, like, it's good to get back to basics and just let's channel the Infinite vibe, for the upcoming format change we got.
It's what we want, because this is a season finale. So next week we're going to be on break, and the week after we are going to be debuting a new format. But fret not, everyone. We'll talk more about that later if we remember. We probably won't, though. So just follow us on Twitter. There we go. That's a tease. That turns laziness into productivity. I like it. So this week, though, we are talking about the 2021 release, Dune, by director Denis Villeneuve, which is, of course, a adaptation of the Frank Herbert novel, and just objectively better than the David Lynch film in every conceivable way. That's my review. All right, done. Episode. Fantastic. Thanks, y'all,
Boom, let's
for
close
coming.
the book on it. Yeah.
It just seems like in pretty much any metric you want to use, it seems to be a success. The pacing is better, the effects are better, the characters are more fleshed out. I have an actual desire to want to watch the sequel, so I hope the sequel occurs sooner rather than later, and not in like 2025 or whenever the fuck it will probably wind up coming out. It didn't feel like a slog for me, and I really, really enjoyed it. That's kind of my big big picture take. What about you, Grift?
Yeah, I'm absolutely there with you. It was a success on pretty much every level, considering that I think this book's been called like unfilmable before, just because of the massive exposition dumps that you need to do to make this story make any sort of sense. And we kind of got into that with last week's episode too. But I think this thing did a great job of showing and not telling the sort of expository heavy backstory that you have to provide. The brutalist sci-fi visuals were incredible. Man, dude, the score. Oh my, like, especially in the IMAX sound system, you felt the music and the vibe just in your bones, and it was truly something to behold, and it really had this sort of like weight to it that in movies that try to be epic now, the sort of like Marvelization of every big budget action blockbuster where all the characters are quipping and there's this sort of like light and cheeky vibe to it. It's like, no, I'm here for an epic, grand, sweeping sci-fi classic, and they swung for the fences on that, and I think they pretty much mostly succeeded.
It's not just like a knock it out of the park. It's like I don't know what's a good comparison. It's like scoring 5 runs in the 9th inning of just some like playoff baseball game.
Yeah,
I don't know what I might be drawing from.
Yeah,
but,
and I gotta say, I'm a little salty, but congrats to the Astros. The Red Sox just fucking did not show up for the end of that series. So
we just had better cameras at the end of the day.
Yeah, they were both cheating back and forth. Like, I think at one point in one of the games there was like a light in center field at Fenway that they had to investigate, but I don't think there was anything nefarious going on there. But yeah, this was like hitting a walk-off grand slam onto the railroad tracks behind Lansdowne Street at Fenway. These references will make sense if you're a baseball fan. If not, fuck you.
Yeah, someone's gonna be like, "Oh yeah, sports ball. Go fuck yourself. It's 2021. You know how baseball works, you stupid fuck."
No, it's cool now for leftists to like sports. Right?
Oh, I get it. Yeah, sorry. Can't wait for them to glom onto that. Be like, I watched Squid Game and I realized that sports are for me too. God, Christ. It's not going to be a good time. One thing I really wanted to point out, just kind of before we dive into the plot and some of the differences that we enjoyed, was discussing kind of the brain trust behind this movie, because I think so much of what makes the movie good started on the production side of things. Mm-hmm. Is that in the 1984 Dune just had a troubled production for 3.5 years. It was a slog to make. Everyone kind of had just a miserable time with it, whereas this seems to be a stark contrast. It's directed, partially edited, partially written, and produced by, of course, the director Denis Villeneuve. It's actually his first big production as a mainline producer, so I have a feeling that since this is a hit, he'll probably end up winding up being a creative culture maker on the production side, so I'm excited for that. And then the other big name producer is a woman who was involved with Godzilla, Kong Skull Island, Godzilla versus Kong, aka like the best non-DC franchise that Warner Brothers still has left. So it was an interesting mind meld of the two of them, I think, stylistically. And of course, the director worked with Villeneuve on Sicario, Arrival. On Sicario and Arrival. And then one note that I thought was very interesting and proof that, with the right source material, things can be good. The cinematographer who did Dune was the same one who did the Rogue One Star Wars movie, as well as was director of photography on The Mandalorian. So it made sense all of a sudden in my head with some of these shots. I was like, oh, if Dune in 1984 was trying to be a Star Wars, but a grown-up Star Wars, why wouldn't you get some of the people who left the Disney Mouse House factory, but were quality cinematographers and just invite them over to try and make Dune instead. Sure. Yeah. I really enjoyed that aspect to it.
Yeah. And like those ones in the Disney Star Wars canon that you mentioned, those are like pretty much, I mean, obviously Last Jedi is controversial. I'm not too down on either side, but Rogue One and The Mandalorian are like two of the only like universally acclaimed Disney Star Wars properties that they've made with that material. So it makes sense. And now that you say that, the visuals did like this, the space stuff did remind me a lot of Rogue One.
Certainly. I mean, the guy knew what he was doing, at least. And so I'm just glad to know that it's being dealt with on an adult level subject matter, instead of like, here's a quirky talking robot for everyone to make an action figure doll toy out of a little bit later on. You know,
I don't know. I'm just picturing like you give the last Skywalker team Dune, and then when Timothy Chalamet sees a guy riding on the worm, he's like, "They ride now. They ride now. They ride now." Like,
hey, you could still have Oscar Isaac delivering the same lines. It works. You know,
that's right. That's
right. Someone mentioned on Twitter, and I thought it was hilarious, of where Oscar Isaac over the past 8 years has gone from being able to play 25 to now being able to play 50, and just credit to the fact that I think he's in his like mid 40s now. So it's very cool to see the wonders of makeup and hair dye that exist.
Yeah,
and people are just now figuring out about it.
I saw that post too, and it's quite an age range that he can portray. And they had him all like salt and peppered up in this one. And
definitely, he had like a wizard beard going.
Yeah, and like I'm seeing a lot of thirst posting after him on the timeline. People like post. There was some like back and forth. Someone like posted a picture of him like just obviously like being like, oh, look how attractive this guy is, and then someone was like, this literally just looks like any Iranian dude.
That may be true, but this is someone who is Guatemalan but gets confused for being Jewish. So, ethnically ambiguous, I think, is the most attractive feature of all when it comes to the facial hairstyle. But I don't know. And when the scene takes place where he has been stripped of his clothes and he's sitting in the chair, I was just like, well, this is a scene for the ladies. Like, you've shown him to be a good dad. Now you get to show off those dad abs right before he dies. Like, and I know what you're doing.
Yeah, and like I don't know if you want to like jump into some of the differences between this one and the 1984 one, but I thought the use of him being stripped naked by the Baron and in captivity was like one good way to just show the sort of the sort of like sexual body horror of the Harkonnen character without leaning into the ridiculous homophobic 80s stereotypes that the 1984 one
No,
relied
come
on. Yeah.
Oh, come on. No. Why? Yeah. What? God, what's that meme? Like, I know writers who use subtext and they're all cowards.
No, but I thought this one did the Baron was incredibly menacing and
my God. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, the way that fucking like spider beast thing that he had, like that just wasn't explained. That like gross like spider dog that was like eating with its like abdomen, like just chilling there, like just like I think I saw someone do an explanation where like it was likely that that was like a human that the Baron had experimented on overdosing with spice.
Yeah. Oh God, that's probably true. Dear Lord. Give me the sequel right now. Why did you not have faith in the project, WB? Film it back to back. Why? Yeah. Why would you do this to us? Oh, God. Just before I forget again, with the Baron Harkonnen, how he is portrayed in this new Dune movie as being probably even fatter, realistically, than in the 1984 Dune, but not comedic at all and outright menacing. And I mean, it's just brilliance with the lighting and the score, and then the performance all working in unison. Whereas the other one kind of felt like your coworker who slaps together a last minute Halloween costume and is kind of doing their best to try and act real quirky and funny the entire time to make up for it. It just felt like Stellan Skarsgård's performance was exactly the tone needed to show what this monolithic kind of character, who's the head of the second largest house in this universe, would actually be like. It felt much more realistic.
Yeah, like he wasn't chewing scenery like the one in 1984. Like he was like part of the scenery, and it all worked together, and it just had this like coherent aesthetic vision to it that it like just every single like they visually portrayed the houses in ways that like made sense to show what the vibes were, and you could tell that the visuals they were tuned perfectly, and just the brutalism of the sci-fi aesthetics, like these massive ship facades that are just like flying. They kind of reminded me of those like the sand people, like the what's the thing in Star Wars? The little guys.
Oh, the Jawa?
Yeah,
the Jawa trucks?
Yeah, like flying Jawa trucks, basically. The
fact that all the spaceships were not aerodynamic or didn't really look like ships, that was just such a fun fact here, because part of me was like, hey, why do they look like... And then I'm like, this is a movie where spice gets you from place to place, so probably doesn't ultimately matter how aerodynamic stuff is when space cocaine is the thing that leads you to the promised land. But
when you need a ship that would be aerodynamic in form and function, like those Dragonfly copters, they pulled it off perfectly as well. Because like just the tech and the way they made the CGI have a real physical weight to it was something that most productions are not doing anymore. Like it felt like these were real, they're obviously not living, but just it felt like a living, like breathing environment where the actual physical ships and stuff, it just felt like they had weight to them, and that when they would explode, there would be actual like concussion waves and debris flying around. It wasn't like the consequence-free, marvelized, just shoot up a city and there's there's cars just blowing up everywhere, but like people are just able to run away and there's like no effects besides like some flying glass or something.
Exactly. I mean, the collateral damage that you see take place, like during the air raid sequence.
Oh my God.
Of what takes place. I mean, that was so visceral, of where it truly felt helpless, as just the sky is raining death down on you. You're like, how on earth are they going to be getting out of this? Like this kind of seems like, well, it's the end for the old Atreides household. And then just seeing as people are dying and then people are getting burned and then running. I mean, as you were mentioning, the explosions creating this echoing effect that lingers throughout the entire scene. And you witness character development occur during this, because people aren't doing fucking quips the entire time. Like, they're allowing the seriousness to permeate throughout the entire scene. So that way, then when you do see the Atreides fighters taking on the Harkonnens, and where you realize like, oh, one member of House Atreides really is as good as 4 Harkonnen fighters as they established like an hour before in the film, it actually makes sense. They're showing, not just telling us. And I think that that's just kind of a real victory, I think, for not only the movie, but also the non-Marvelization of epics as we have come to know them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way they just introduce like a subset of people within this world with like by showing, but doing it very effectively. Like when they were introducing the Sardaukar legions, like the Emperor's troops, there was just this like massive launching ceremony where they just had like thousands of prisoners just like bloodletting and having their blood running into this trough, and then they were putting the blood on their foreheads and marking them, and it was just such a great way to like introduce like, oh yeah, this is the Imperial Army that is going off to war on behalf of the Harkonnens, and just really the palpable menace to it. Just set the scene perfectly.
Everything had been so clearly thought through. Nothing was improvised, it felt like, at least, because everything fit so perfectly together with the set, with the culture, with everything else that they get. Mm-hmm. And it feels all the more impressive because I was convinced that even if this Dune movie was going to be good, I thought that it was going to wind up getting John Cartered. And by that, I mean, John Carter came out before Superman and before a lot of other kind of comic booky sci-fi tropes had come into existence. And so when finally they decided to make a John Carter movie, it felt incredibly derivative because we had seen everything before.
Yeah.
And somehow they found a way to have new looks, new feelings, new vibes, to use that word, for the entire film, where everything just felt fresh for me. And so, I mean, there are ridiculous things like the dragonfly helicopters that exist, and then the poop suits, of course, but no one's quipping about it. No one's making jokes about it or being like, oh, God, you stink, or like, are you going right now, or whatever. Yeah. Like, it's just showing you what the world actually is, because it's letting, believe it or not, the people who watch the movie make the jokes about the art itself, versus the art trying to be like, oh yeah, no, we're just like you. Look at this. Crazy, huh?
That's a really good point, because all the memes and all the discourse that are coming out of it is people creating their own content based on the like film itself, like all the worm memes and all the like obviously the people lusting after Timothy Chalamet and
of course. Yeah, you got to have a little bit of lusting after the main character. That's fine. It is also funny to me seeing the discourse start to take place about I don't know if I can take Timothy Chalamet as a traditional leading man in Hollywood. It just seems like he's better if he plays weird characters with bizarre tics, or people who are just insane types of character actors would probably be his a better path for him to go down than strictly leading man territory. And it has been a delight for the people who've read Dune and know what happens to Paul Atreides. So I'm like, no, then that makes actually even better casting. Thank you so much. Yeah, this works even better now.
And just to highlight some particularly funny posts and discourse that have come out of this, there was that one person who some blue check journalist clearly was not familiar with the source material at all, but she was trying to like dunk on how the movie apparently like portrayed deserts as barren wastelands. And like, I just
famous barren wasteland Arrakis. Not at all the entire point.
No,
that is what the Harkonnens thought that the desert was. Okay. Did she also, weigh about 400 pounds and float up to the ceiling from time to time?
No, I don't think it was the same journalist as the one that was telling everyone to tighten their belts during supply chain shortages.
Oh God. One thing that when people ask me, like, what's like, show me an image from Dune 1984 that you think is stupid, that you think that Dune 2021 has made cool, and the answer is those fucking body shields. Because that shit was dope. Yeah. I thought it was the stupidest thing when watching the 1984 movie, and now I'm like, yeah, that actually seems pretty fucking sick across the board. It was a delight.
Yeah, and the suits, provided like a plausible explanation for why I mean, this goes back to the book's lore, but why people are doing hand-to-hand combat far in the future. Because I think if you like shoot a bullet or some sort of projectile at one of the suits, it creates like a gigantic nuclear-sized explosion that would just wipe out everyone. So you literally have to get super close and like pass your blade in this certain way, like through the shield. And it provided a really good way so you get some like just pretty fucking kick-ass hand-to-hand combat.
It really did. And then the guns that were being used, like in the scene where you watch the doctor snipe out Oscar Isaac, how he shot, but then it's almost like a drill of a bullet that was trying to drill through the energy shield itself. And I just thought, oh, well, of course that's how the technology would then operate. It wouldn't bounce off, and it wouldn't, just kind of try and move to laser weapons of some kind. Like you would try and develop drills that would just burrow in until it goes slowly enough to bust in. And it's just fascinating how they made all of that make sense. And I wish I could say like, oh, I'm just giving credit to the director, to the production design, but it probably is them just reading the book and going, okay, now how can we make this cool? How can we make this actually appear on screen and make sense?
Yeah, and like just the concept of a movie, of a sci-fi movie that actually has like both like a coherent aesthetic vision with tech that makes sense in the world, but using it all to wrap, like to build the world and to show not tell with exposition. Like it's just it was a master class in that sort of movie making, which you need to do for a ridiculously complicated sci-fi epic with you've got fucking space witches, you've got you've got oil that makes you trip balls. Like it's hey,
it's a tincture thing. If you know a guy, it works pretty well. It's just fascinating. One of the criticisms I have seen that people have brought up about this movie seems to be that they want a lower entry point, because it seems like there's a desire for people to want a hero's journey, aka watching someone who goes from nothing to go to something, like the Luke Skywalker kind of journey. He starts off as a farm boy, then he finds out he's the special boy. Like, whoa, so cool, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's missing the point, that this is not a hero's journey. Like, this is a God's journey. Like, he already has pretty much everything, but then he gets everything, like you're watching someone who's rising up, because it's one thing to watch someone go from obscurity and be plucked from it and then become told like, now you're the main character. You never want to be the main character on Twitter, but in the world of sci-fi epics, being the main character is a lovely thing. But instead, to find out that you're the special boy, it might seem like it's giving you this awe, or it seems to be like what every kid and narcissist on Twitter especially thinks that they want to be. But instead, what this movie does such a great job of showing, with that scene with Paul and his mom in the tent, of realizing like, oh God, like you are the special boy. It all hinges on you. Wars are going to be fought in your name. Atrocities will be committed, thinking that they are channeling you. Like you're watching like a supervillain origin story, more like, and you're helpless to do this because it's what your life is and what the future holds in store for you. Yeah, it's just fascinating.
And like I did see some criticism online. It's like, oh look, we get another white savior narrative. The inheritor of a noble house of white people comes to the desert planet to rule over the natives, and they're worshiping him as a god. But yes, you can track it along those lines if you're looking at the barest outline of the plot. But it's also explained how the reason that they're worshiping him is because of a political narrative, like a cultural political narrative that is being seeded into them by the Bene Gesserit. like space witches.
Exactly.
So it sort of flips it on its head a bit, and it's gonna be really interesting to see in part 2, or even if they keep going, like how they grapple with showing like, oh yeah, the white savior messiah. It's like, no, yeah, you're watching a supervillain, a person who in the scope of this epic history dwarfs Hitler, dwarfs the war, like Genghis Khan, like the worst genociders of history in the scope of his actions and the deaths and the stuff done in his name, and seeing the drawbacks and effects that it has on an individual. So I think it's way more complicated than just like, oh, we get another pretty white boy, just saving the nomadic primitive desert people, you know?
Yeah, it's almost like they're trying to fulfill that narrative on their own end, because it's almost like the movie goes out of its way to show that these desert people have incredibly advanced technology and are just entirely unique, and their customs are different, and so that it's all misunderstandings. Like the spit scene I thought was fantastic. Where Javier Bardem comes in and just spits on the ground, and they're like, oh my god, oh, how could you do that? And then Jason Momoa, MVP performance, by the way,
he's great.
of this movie by Jason Momoa. But yeah, he's explaining what the custom is and how it is such a sign of respect to waste this moisture by giving it to someone, you know, like it just felt so right. At least they nailed the tone of it.
And just the little ways that they show the importance of water, like the caretaker of the trees explaining like why they're wasting, each tree is worth like 20 lives in its water use. And then that little mouse that they showed, that shot of its ears, it's thin webbed ears and the water perspirating on there, and then it would get its little hands and then take the water droplets and put them in its mouth. And it's just these little tiny little bits of world building that all together come to create this picture, which is, it felt like you were watching a real fucking movie. You know, like,
it's crazy how this could happen. You know, well, because there are those soft little moments that build out such a rich tapestry of everything, of what occurs in the movie, because I feel like it's so easy to get caught up in the stuff like, oh, well, you have a royal dad who likes desert power, and you have mom who uses space magic and the force and all that. But those little moments that bring everything into just the tiniest of things, like you said, with the mouse and the water, like that adds such a depth to this movie that I feel like it wouldn't have. Or at the very least, I'm not going to say if another studio was making this, that then someone would make a joke about the mouse or something, or completely undercut it, or, you know, just like the mouse would then in a post-credit scene find an entire pool of water all by itself, or whatever the fuck Ratatouille 2 Dune edition ends up becoming. But it just felt like it again was given room to breathe, and I like that. What did you think about them blatantly laying out the foundation for why the Bene Gesserit were so mad at Timothy Chalamet's mom for making him a boy instead of a girl? Did you catch that?
Yeah, and that, like, I've read the first book in this series, so, you know, I was a little familiar with the way that works, where it's like the boys typically don't have the powers, so and women are more, I guess, like genetically attuned to gaining the voice, and there's a reason that all the most powerful, you know, like Bene Gesserit mages or whatever you're going to call them are women, and he's like this unique individual as a boy. So it was like it flipped that traditional thing on its head, where, you know, like there's a lot of movies now where it's just like, oh, you're like, oh, we're empowering women, and because when we're calling out the fact that, oh, you can be just like the boys, whereas like if you're actually gonna like an example of a movie that does that well is like the Mad Max Fury Road and Furiosa's character. It's like, no, this is just a badass person who happens to be a woman, whereas like in and this is like an inversion of that trope with him with Paul being a unique individual as a guy, but it felt very true to the books, and and you didn't even notice anything like out of place, and it felt natural, and it didn't like the whole thing didn't fit into any of the like cultural narratives that you see pumped through movies so much these days, and it felt like it existed out of cultural time and place in a way that the classic movie epics all do.
And it is fascinating to me because I think that this is a movie. I mean, as with most art, it is always fascinating to see the people who ignore subtext. Like, it'll be fascinating to see how they turn like the right-wing philosophy on space colonialism bad into like, oh, actually, it's a good thing because then they could help the Fremen and blah, 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 or whatever it would be. But it just was interesting to see there be this focus on like with the Fremen about how they've seen houses come and go from the area. But then we're also told about how the Harkonnens have been in charge for hundreds of years. So it gives a scope to what the Fremen are used to. Like they don't see things in a strictly yearly fashion, decade fashion, or even century fashion. It's just so much more cosmic as a level to it than anything else, and so that just was a delight for me.
Exactly. I think if I remember correctly, they said the Harkonnens had been there for like 80 years or something.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
And then, but yeah, like the Fremen have this. They are the true masters of the planet because they develop this technology that even these huge, great houses don't have, and they don't know how it works. And they have that, like you mentioned, that concept of like desert power, which like that line where it's like, oh, we have on Caladan, the Atreides had air and sea power, but we need desert power. Like that could have been like that line. I feel like in a lesser movie would be so fucking cheesy. But then,
oh yeah, because then Duncan Idaho would pull up like with a massive machine gun and be like, "I'm a fan of firepower myself." You know, it's just
and then it comes back around where Paul sees the Fremen riding the worm at the end. And he's like, desert power, and it's like it perfectly it whets the appetite for the upcoming part 2. Which by the way, like to open your sweeping sci-fi epic where the sequel hasn't even been greenlit yet with part 1, that's just a fucking baller move. Like,
yeah, that is some wild shit indeed. That I think only works if you pull off a good movie, because there are a lot of things that come out as like part 1 of the blah 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 saga that end up falling directly on its face.
Yeah.
You know, like look at John Carter, for example, or what's another recent one, the Mortal Instruments or something like that.
There are so many of those, like a lot of like YA fantasy lit too, where everyone was trying to be the next Harry Potter, and then everyone was trying to be the next Hunger Games, and they were taking established properties and trying to make series, and so many of them fell flat on their face and never got a follow up.
I'm really waiting for like what movies Dune is going to inspire, because people are going to get the wrong message in a lot of ways, and so I'm really looking forward to seeing what the Dune clones are going to be in about 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, you've already got the fucking Amazons, like what they're doing, Wheel of Time, right?
Yeah. I'm not.
They're
that's
trying to be
get
Game
real
of Thrones
weird
all over again, and it's like I know production photos always look cheesy, but like you're trying too hard here, particularly when it's been reported that like Bezos was like you need to fucking give me the next Game of Thrones right now, and we need to do it, and it's just so forced. And well, I mean,
it is.
Yeah.
I like a legitimate question here. Like, how much money? Because, like, let's rewind the Wheel of Time just a little bit to like 5 years ago. I think it was roughly then where the rumors began, at least, about Bezos wanting to buy the Lord of the Rings as an intellectual IP. Mm-hmm. Conversely, how much do you think he could have bought Dune for? That's my question.
Probably pennies in comparison. Like,
it's just wild to me that this is the route they went with when there was this other property. But it makes what Denis Villeneuve did that much more impressive to me. Just everything feels so incredibly rich. It's also been pointed out that this movie cost $50 million less than Black Widow did, which is
okay,
just...
all right. Disney Marvel are absolutely cooking the books. I mean, maybe it has something to do with how much they have to pay their stars, and obviously there was the...
they had to just pay Scarlett Johansson. What other stars were in Black Widow?
That's true. I mean, she does have that whole lawsuit out over the fact that she
and they underpaid her.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I mean, I was more referencing just like the crazy stories you hear about how much people in the MCU were getting paid because they were able to leverage their role as his character in this universe. And then, but I mean, this had a fucking stacked cast. Like this, there was just a lot of, familiar faces who are given really, really like honestly pretty austere performances, and but it felt right. Like it wasn't overacted. No one was chewing the scenery and was trying to make it about themselves. They all fit as a part of the whole together.
Because it's excellent casting. It was like, who is like a warm, charismatic guy we know can work with clunky dialogue, as evidenced by the latest Star Wars trilogy. Oscar Isaac, fantastic. You be the dad. Very cool. Who is someone who can play like a tough female character that is cheaper than Charlize Theron, at least at the moment? Rebecca Ferguson. Fantastic, from Mission Impossible. This will be very good. We need someone who's like a charismatic, like guy's guy kind of guy. What can we get? Jason Momoa, Aquaman himself.
Yeah.
Apparently
Khal Drogo himself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I should have put that instead. He apparently asked Denis Villeneuve while getting ready for the role, like, do I need to have abs for my character? And Denis Villeneuve was like, you're never going to have your shirt off, so no. And he's like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, that was another thing, like, because it made sense. They were always like armored up, and they had their either fighting gear on, or the Atreides family, they had their royal attire on. There's no reason for them to do any gratuitous ab shots or anything, or just people just because particularly, I mean, people talk about how under-sexualized and sort of vanilla the Marvel stuff is, but a lot of those like Captain America movies and stuff, they'll just have these gratuitous shots of them walking around like shirtless and stuff, and it's like, okay, we know who this is for. Like, this is
that's right. Yeah. It's for the moms who drove everyone there. By God, she needs a night to herself. I want you to just picture all those rock hard dehydrated muscles all over you. Oh, God. Well, I mean, also I've seen people, so mild spoilers, I guess, for the series, of talking about like, well, it's so sad that Jason Momoa is gone. And I didn't know this until I stumbled across it. But apparently Duncan Idaho like comes back in the books several different times because he's getting cloned. I just love that. I hope that they're able to keep getting Jason Momoa at the different points of his career that they want. Because I mean, he knocked it out of the park this time. He was like a Han Solo-esque character, probably in terms of total screen time, as well as like the actual vibe of where the joy came from the fact of he was kind of one note, he rocked it out, and then he had a one heroic moment, and that's all you needed. Yeah,
and just the way that they contributed to his mystique by they were talking about the strength of the Atreides forces, and the Harkonnens like, oh, but they're trained by Gertie Halleck and Duncan Idaho, and you're like, oh shit, like we haven't even seen these guys in action yet, and their reputation in the movie already precedes them. And it's a way to build backstory, like that most movies would rather like just straight up like tell you and beat you over the head with it, but literally just little
or they would use
lines.
them as Worf. Are you familiar with what would happen with Worf on Star Trek?
No, I haven't seen any Star Trek.
Okay, so, well, good for you, humble brag in and of itself.
Yeah,
but
low-key flex.
Yeah, but on the show, at least in the 80s and 90s, Next Generation, Worf was there. He had a lot of other character elements, don't get me wrong, but in this particular case, Worf was established to always be like a badass, so that way then anytime they had a villain show up to show how badass they were, they would just wreck Worf shit just immediately. And so it was to establish like the power level of the series. And so I'm so glad that we didn't see Gurney and Duncan Idaho like sparring with each other as then they're told about how good each one is, and that's kind of it. Instead, it's revealed, as you were mentioning, throughout the movie of where like they're able to take out 2 guys at a time, then 4 guys at a time, then like a hallway full of guys.
Oh, dude, you gotta love a good hallway fight scene. Where
you hear that, Marvel? That's how you do a hallway fight scene.
Yeah, and just the way the combat, like the not just the dodging blows and parrying and striking, but the way that they would use their bodies to like kick their opponent's feet out from under them, and just these it was this sort of like dirty like martial arts style that felt both like very like trained and choreographed, but also very dynamic and anything could happen, and they were using body physics in a way that's like realistic and how someone who's in a life or death situation would improvise on the spot,
And I really liked how the fighting styles were different, truly, from each house and each people group. Like the Fremen, the Harkonnens, and the Atreides, they all fought in slightly different ways, to where then it really did kind of feel like, depending on the situation, certain people would have a much larger upper hand than others. Yeah. I mean, like when the Fremen did the sneak attack where they were all hiding in the sand itself.
Dude, popping out of the sand. That was so awesome. And then it teased more for the future, too, because you had Paul's vision of the eventual guerrilla desert jihad that they were going to do, of him leading the Fremen against a Harkonnen spice mining force. And they're all, like, that shot of all of them jumping out of the sand together in unison with just the right of slow-mo. It was like, holy shit. Like, we've never seen anything like this before.
Such a good movie. We'll have to wait 3 years until it comes out.
Well, at least it's been confirmed. It's they greenlit the sequel, so that's good, because I think it had the best opening box office with a simultaneous streaming release. So they won on both fronts there.
They did everything they could to cut this movie off at the knees, but Dune kept chugging, by God.
Yeah. The spice must flow.
God, it's so good, the whole movie, because like there are cheesy elements and there are campy elements, like Baron Harkonnen operating on Wishmaster rules, where it's like, he said I would keep your wife safe, I would free her, not that I wouldn't kill her, like
classic
that sort
villain
of stuff.
Shit. Yeah.
Like, like it's has those characters. So I want to mention that when people talk about how, well, this movie is inaccessible, like, no, it's really not. Like, you just kind of got to be on board for what it is. Like, and it's not asking that much of you. It's letting moments breathe. Yeah. And it's going to eventually, at least my prediction, is that David Lowery, the director of Green Knight, I want him to direct the 3rd Dune movie when there's a worm emperor. Ooh. That's what I want,
Hell yeah.
Green Knight version of just a worm going all around the desert.
Dude, it's when Timothée Chalamet turns into a worm, the memes are going to go off. Like, invest in Timothée Chalamet worm memes. You got to combine the two.
It's called a parlay bet, is what it is. Like, it sounds like gibberish now, but trust me, it's going to be trending in about 7 years.
Hey,
or so.
We've all seen Uncut Gems. We have at least a little knowledge of what's going on there. I'm
sorry, I should remember that, but Man, just an amazing movie across the board. It feels silly here for me to be saying this, but it's the last question that we got to ask is this garbage or is this not? It feels so stupid to have to say this.
No, I think you already know what we're going to say. Absolutely not garbage. The furthest thing from garbage you could get. I mean, if it were to have a fault, it's that it is very long, even though they only did part of the books, and it's sort of it did have a emotionally resonant climax where Paul finally had to he was fighting the Fremen in single combat, and he finally had to kill and become a man and embrace his destiny as a mass murderer and a leader of a jihad.
Crazy that they would want that emotional payoff to end the movie when they could have just done a sky beam. Right? Look, that's what they should have done. Where, it just worked. That's how you do a movie that ends with a one-on-one knife fight, David Lynch.
Yeah,
that's how
right.
you make a goddamn thing.
That's right, yeah, because the knife fight climax in the 1984 one, it was like both an incredibly cheesy fight scene and it felt tacked on at the end.
Like this was the emotional resonance you were trying to go for, where you're not sure what's exactly going to happen because Paul Atreides has just had a vision where the guy he's having to kill is like, I'm so glad we've become best friends. I'm going to tell you all about Arrakis. And then he has to kill him. Oh, God,
Yeah. And so, I mean, it was... I think a challenge for them probably was definitely finding a good place to end it and cut this whole story off in the middle, so you actually have a film with a traditional, relatively traditional structure. But I think they did as good of a job as they could have with that. It really whet the appetite for the sequel and what's to come, and it gives motivation for the characters to get revenge and to come back from the dark place that they find themselves in.
Absolutely,
but it really never dragged it into. Despite its length, and it really kept you engaged. And like you were saying, like, this is a movie, you don't want to be on your phone for this one. You want to like shut your phone off, get the biggest screen as possible in front of you, and just let yourself like lose yourself in this thing.
I hesitate to use the word masterpiece because, I think a lot of it can be subjective, but I think this is the platonic ideal of what a Dune movie part 1 could be. Like, I can't imagine a better part 1 Dune movie existing than this.
Man.
So,
I mean, for an unfilmable book, they sure as fuck filmed it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, Lawrence of Arabia in space meets Game of Thrones. Sure, yeah, let's make it happen. And wouldn't you know it, like they pulled it off, by God. This movie is definitely not garbage. I mean, I would probably hesitate to say, but I mean, because I don't want to be jumping the boat entirely or jumping the gun entirely, jumping the gunship entirely. I don't know. I don't. Pick your metaphor here. But I mean, I think that this is probably my favorite movie of 2021 so far. I mean, it's right up there like with Green Knight for me in terms of like a movie that I felt so happy to experience. And so,
I absolutely agree. Like I can't think of anything besides those two movies this year that actually felt like real competent productions and are going to probably stand the test of time.
Yeah, can't wait for us to have the same opinion about Marvel's Eternals coming out in 2 weeks. Let's get ready for Gleep Glorping Kingo. One of those names is made up, and it's not the one you're thinking.
let's get ready for Druig or whatever.
Oh God, it's just. It's so sad because that's a Green Knight alum right there.
Yeah.
Good for him. Get that money, man.
Yeah.
So that way, then you can be in Doom 3 and go fight a worm or something, man.
Rob Stark, get that Marvel money.
yeah. Bleed him dry is all I can say for it. So, That and enjoy a Marvel movie that does not play in China. So we'll see how that ends up faring. Speaking of movies that probably won't end up getting sequels. So we'll see.
My God, yeah. And just poor Kumail, like just transforming his body into this like hulking steroid beast, and then he's just in a CGI costume the whole time.
You know what? If you're going to be fourth build on like a sci-fi epic, I think Jason Momoa showed everyone the right way to do it.
Yeah.
You know, like we're like the two career paths. I think for Camille it makes me have hope for there to be like a slightly out of shape Aquaman. I say knowing Jason Momoa is probably like 100 times more athletic and more in shape than the average American. So him on his cheat days. But let's slide over on into plugs as we wrap things up. What's happening in the shop, Grift?
It is Halloween week. I got a surprise collab coming soon with a poster who has done some previous work with the shop. So excited about that. I got a spooky Joe Biden shirt coming too, so that should be fun. Gotta take advantage of the season while it's here.
Yeah. It's one of those things of where people don't seem to celebrate Halloween on like November 3rd or something. It's very weird how there's like an entire month of lead up, and then immediately after it's like, okay, it's Thanksgiving time to put on Hallmark, wear either red or green sweaters, and start looking forward to family coming over and annoying us. So yeah. One big blowout. It's going to be a blast.
Time to put on the Warren Christmas hat.
Yes. See, the pivot point. It begins. I like it. Let's see. As for the podcast, of course, follow us on Twitter and Letterboxd at Gigo Podcast. I recently added on several of the movies that we covered on the show and have talked about. And so I feel like I'm more or less caught up in that way. So I feel pretty happy. And then also feel free, rate us 5 stars on iTunes and Spotify. Some people have said, hey, I can't see where I can access the 5-star rating on Spotify. And to that, I say, well, it's not my fault. They only are rolling it out to certain people yet. Maybe stream more Drake, and then they'll give you access to rate something 5 stars. I don't know. Everyone listens to weird shit, I can see, based on the analytics. So, yeah, it's going to be weird. We're taking a Halloween break, celebrating All Hallows Eve, and then we're going to be back with a new format. We think everyone's going to enjoy it. Of course, we're still going to be talking about movies from time to time, but what just a wonderful way for us to end this season on. I am so just happy and excited, and it's only downhill from here.
Yeah, I hope they enjoyed us just slathering this thing with praise rather than just shitting all over it and rewriting the entire script, which usually is what we end up doing for these. But
how can I rewrite that which has been amazingly written? I can't. Yeah. I'm sorry. That, and also, like, if you ever, hey, Denny, we know you're listening. If you ever want someone to punch up your script, Grift and I, we're available. We can add a whole B story plot line about supply chain issues with spice that take over. We know you're a fan of it. So.
Yeah, if you need us to point out rising milk prices, we're gonna make a Gigo account on Fiverr.
No, we're saving that for Star Wars. It's the rising cost of blue milk, because that's what those little piss piggies like, is jokes like that over and over again. So, but all right, let's say goodbye.
Peace.
Deuces.